This is The New Hoodoo. I'm Halicue HANNA, and this is the podcast that invites you to join us, two Mississippi mystics and real-life sisters, as we share the ways we use our intuitive gifts, spiritual tools, and ancestral spiritual lineage to create an intentioned, abundant life. Are you longing to initiate, cultivate, or evolve your spirituality by reconnecting to your ancestral heritage? If you want to create a holistic spiritual lifestyle that respects your modernity, uniqueness, but also embraces eclecticism, you are in the right place. We remember what it was like to kick our way out of the broom closet, and we know that sometimes it feels really lonely out there for new mystics, witches, and hoodoos. So know this, today and in this moment, you are a part of our sisterhood. So brew a cup of tea, let's light our candles, and make a little magic here in our very own charmed corner of Beyonce's internet. Okay, y'all, this episode started off as a Hoodoo Hot Topic episode, and it quickly turned into a full-blown review of Wakanda Forever, the latest offering in MCU's Black Panther franchise. And I don't know if y'all knew, but Andi is the podcast's official MCU expert and scholar and professor. The Wakanda Forever movie is brimming with themes relevant to the practice of hoodoo and other ATRs, or African traditional religions or spiritual practices. Things like mourning, loss, experiences in the ancestral plane, ancestor veneration, and of course, one of my actual favorites to talk about, the benefits and pitfalls of undertaking magic or spell work when we're experiencing trauma or we're in the grasp of wrath. And we're going to discuss all of that. And yeah, the answer is yes, there will absolutely be spoilers. Join us up on the porch. It's going to be a good conversation. Hey, y'all, welcome to The New Hoodoo. It is Halicue and
Andi.
Oh, we're so happy to be here today. Today is going to be, it's going to be a fun episode. We are doing Hoodoo Hot Topics today. There have been so many things going on around us, and we are hoodoos that, some of us your practice is it's your living, or, it's your living. You have to spend 24 hours doing it. But, Andy, like, we're moms, Andy's got a job, and we live in the real world. Like, we live here on Earth, and we like to enjoy earthly things. And the earthly thing that it's really taken up a lot of our attention, we're just going to jump off. We've got about 4 or 5 topics, but let's just talk about what I know all of our families, like every member of both of our families, have really gotten into. And I know I'm looking at this from a different take than like my husband, my children are, but we have got to talk about the Black Panther and Wakanda Forever. Andi is a Marvel head. I'm going to go ahead and just let her get into it. It's already, of course, it's like totally conquered the November box office, opening with a record 800 million. King T'Challa is dead. And it's just an amazing movie. We had a wonderful time, and I think it has so much relevance. And I'm going to turn it over to Andi.
Well, there was no spoiler alert to it because I'm a huge fan of the comic book series Shuri. She had her own comic book series just around her. And one of her first comic book series, she actually puts on the first, kind of episode is how she takes on the mantle of Black Panther. And so, when you start and open with the movie, for anyone who has been living on some other planet, if you don't know, Chadwick Boseman was sick during the filming of most of the Avengers movies and kept it a huge secret to most of the world. Nobody knew he was sick. And so I think everyone was a little sensitive to how they were going to explain that in the movie. I'll be honest, I tried to stay away. Like, I stepped away from the comic books and a lot of that stuff because, the way that the previews of the trailer set it up, you almost thought that the main villain was the cause of why he died, until you realize in the beginning of the movie that no, they're really gonna, kind of address the fact that he died of a mysterious illness, right? And that's where they started with, which was Shuri frantically trying to help her brother, right? So if you don't remember where the last Black Panther movie cut off, after Killmonger became king, he burned all of the herb that made Black Panther the Black Panther. So if you guys are not fans of the movie, you have to, the way the Black Panther manifests, it's through a lineage, right? A royal lineage. And you take on the mantle of Black Panther, and it's the protector of Wakanda. Wakanda was a secret society before the end of the first movie. You take this purple herb and you go through this ceremony, you go into the ancestral plane, and then you get bestowed with the power of the Black Panther. right? That's how it happens. And so she's trying to, after Killmonger burned it all, she's trying to frantically, recreate or genetically recreate this herb to try to save her brother. And of course, she's not able to do it. And then she finds out that her brother dies. And so there was a lot of controversy. I saw a couple of TikTokers that were like, oh, it's just really disrespectful to treat his passing that way in the movie. And I thought this critic explained it really, really well, is that it was a beautiful way. I was just looking at some of the images from the first funeral scene that were in the trailer. Ooh, and that song, No Woman, No Cry, which is just personally from our family culture, is a very moving song for me. But it was really, I thought it was very respectful the way they did it, because they didn't do us the disservice of trying to wrap some story around it in a comic book, because I think the company understood what a huge monument this character was to children of color. Yeah, and I mean, damn that, to adults of color. Disney adults will tell you all the time, we know we're living out our trauma at Disney World, and let us have our moment. Why do y'all let us have it? Damn. Disney adults are harmless, right? Yeah. But even in that community, this was a huge, cultural significance. And we lost a really young, talented, exceptionally educated man who was really dedicated to his craft. I mean, outside of Black Panther and that character in and of itself, which has always been groundbreaking. I mean, that character was created in the 60s when wasn't nobody trying to hear of Black people doing nothing that was forward, much less technologically advanced. I mean, it was a way for us as the whole world to participate in a sense as Wakandans in the passing of someone who is super important to us. So I personally, I respected the way they treated his passing and didn't create a story out of it, but really just let us truly grieve both this character and the man. Yeah.
Girl, I even thought the opening, and Andi is the Marvel head, has been since we were kids. I even thought in the opening sequence, the way they spell out Marvel and all the different, the different montages of him. I was like, oh, I'm crying before we even get started, which goes to, and I always everything we're going to talk about today, I feel is relevant to Hoodoo and to our practice. Andi and I just finished recording last week a long 2-part episode. Y'all are going to really enjoy it, on healing and harm. And you mentioned something, Andi, that's people give us a hard time about working out our trauma and shit through these movies and through our love of the different universes. And I appreciate that, because Andi, I thought so much about this movie from just reinforcing the message of when we die, when we pass, we don't go away. We go to where where the ancestors are. We go to the ancestral plane. And I thought it was this wonderful lesson about death and mourning and what happens when you undertake work, when your state of mind is bad, when you are in wrath and in anger. I thought it was so beautiful. But can I ask a specific question first? Andi, when the coffin goes up into the spaceship, where was the coffin going?
That ain't your business. I'm assuming.
Is that not our business? Because I was
assuming the assumption is kind of like a funeral pyre, but with technology. I'm assuming they take it up there and incinerate it, because that's the only.
I was like, where are they going?
That's the only thing, that I could think of, because Wakanda is completely secret. So I'm assuming that they just, I don't know. I'll have to research that. But one of the things that I liked about the funeral scene too, that I always, because we live close to New Orleans, and you talk about the practice of our culture, and I laugh a little bit, because I think the lesson is also about when you abandon the practices of our culture. There was a lot of discussion about rituals and culture and the new, and I think that had a lot to do with developing Shuri's personality, because even seeing her in the original movie, that was kind of always her struggle dynamic, is that she was this really smart, progressive young girl in the kingdom who really wasn't interested in being a princess. So insert Arya Stark, insert Joan of Arc, insert a lot of these women in historical context, or in these archetypal contexts that we put of that we're kind of misunderstood. We're super smart. We don't necessarily march to the beat of everyone else's drum, and we don't see the purpose of the ritual and spirituality in our life. So I thought it had a really good commentary on how a lot of old people view technology in general. that it's a stripping somehow of our ancestral practices. So I thought it was a great way to talk about how we have to marry those two things with our practice. But I think it also had a lot to talk about with, Shuri's trying to find herself at the time that she is going through a great deal of grief. Like, this family has been just boot stomped, right, by life from the beginning. Like, their father dies tragically, the uncle dies tragically, Killmonger comes back and has a cousin Faith moment, almost, blows the whistle on everybody. Then T'Challa dies. Then her mom dies, and at the same time, there's just this continuous conversation they're having about generations of women. Because I don't know about you, but from the beginning of this movie, when homegirl, so we get through the funeral scene. So one thing I want to say about this is grief. We're going to come back to this, like working through grief, healing, and trauma. But the images, and every single funeral scene, like even looking at his where they walk through the streets so everyone could mourn the king, but even like juxtaposing that with the queen's funeral, which was much more private and was in the forest. Because I remember leaning over to my 14-year-old going, I want to be buried just like this, but Aunt Carol won't let me. You make sure I get buried just like this under a tree with just y'all and not a whole bunch of crazy rigmarole. My son was probably at the same time. I was like, okay, Mom. But I think that it said a lot. And so that concept with, in Wakanda, death is not the end, is very much, and that whole crossing over to the ancestral plane. Because, in a lot of ways, when you look at Black Panther, you think, oh, well, you have to be royalty to go to the ancestral plane. And that's not true. Right? Like, and who and how your ancestors come to you has so much to do with your mind state. So when we talk about practicing hoodoo and practicing hoodoo from a place of brokenness, girl, you know what I'm going through? And then people trying to buy love candles. Like, you gotta be careful.
Like not now is not the
as
time.
As a practitioner, you have to be, and you have to be responsible. Like, I ain't making no family stuff right now because I feel like I'm a warrior goddess. So I'm making warrior goddess stuff.
Y'all. We gonna have to wait. We're gonna have to wait on that peaceful home candle. we gonna have to wait on.
You get what I'm saying?
We're not gonna get that in 2022.
May not get it in 2023.
We just not gonna get it.
It's gonna come when it's supposed to come. But
it was gonna come when it's supposed to come.
But that's kind of what we're saying, is because Shuri she had a lot of anger. But it was righteous.
Can we talk more about
anger.
that? Can we talk?
Right?
Yes, talk more.
Well, first of all, let's juxtapose it though with, as the first thing she did when she lost her brother is first took blame, right? And then right, there's also the weight of the whole country. Because it's not your fault that the herb is gone, but you have put this tremendous emotional weight on yourself of fixing things. Yeah. What does it sound like in our families? Raise your hand in the back, us that's healed, that are, that watch people we love struggle because they're running away from loss, right? And just the pain of loss.
Yeah.
Right.
And you haven't accepted it. I was like, Shuri is trying to do, like, I'm not going to call it doing work, but connecting to the ancestors when she was mad. And I wanted you to I love that you spoke about anger, because so few of us, especially if you grew up the way, me and Andy did, like down south under our way, children don't get to experience anger. Like, the only people who really get to express anger are the grown-ups, like, the elders. Like, you just don't get to. So when you said that about, Shuri, because I knew who was going to turn around in that chair. I didn't know how Killmonger was coming. I haven't been following, like all the previews and all that. But I was like,
looking like a
delicious.
Like, of course.
Oh my God! In his snuggly crochet pajamas.
I was just like, can we stop? The whole movie, I have
second.
never seen a movie more when I was like, I can't wait till this motherfucker come out on streaming, because I ain't gonna do nothing but hit pause. That's all I'm gonna do.
Girl.
Y'all gonna get sick of me.
I know.
When it comes out on Disney
Girl,
Plus.
did y'all, okay, this is totally an aside. Did you see, were they showing the previews to Creed? When you went to go see it?
No.
I don't even like Creed.
They were not showing the previews to Creed. But let me tell you who I did see before this. Mr. Umbuku in the Fenty show with your pajamas on, with Chang-Chi, with your chest out, Marvel showing up. doing the thing. We're going to talk about that later. That's a hot girl. That's a hot topic.
When he turned around with the crochet ass snuggly pajamas and that, like, his dress, like, pulled back into, like, a
sitting in that chair like an African soul lounge. Girl.
I was like, oh.
And then the lighting
and I knew when I saw fire.
Yes.
Girl, I saw fire. All I thought was the wands and the tarot. I was like, oh, it's
when
hot.
She came
she's
back
mad.
in that suit, I just shook my head. My son was like, what? I was like, righteous anger. Let's talk about it, Hoodoo folks. Does it have a place? Yes.
Yes, totally.
Use it, feed it. But there's also this concept, too, of you don't get to pick your ancestors in a lot of situations. And where you're buying yourself and where you are working and how you're doing your work, you take your pain and where you are and who you are at the moment into your work. And that's why it's important that you always start with your shadow work, because if you have not worked out this shit in your heart, right? If you have not worked out these difficult concepts of duality. And, you know, there's one thing I like about Shuri, though, because I was torn at first, because I was like, are they really glorifying her taking on this role of righteous anger and nobility? But then I thought about it. Who better understands balance of those two things than a woman? Yeah. Look at all the women who led in this movie. That queen started with some, let me tell you who is running things here. The King Ramonda scene, girl, with her at the UN.
Oh, that was wonderful. And I was like, France, what's up, France? What's good?
First,
which is interesting.
I was just waiting for the memes. I can't wait for the first one who makes that meme go, let me see you walk, 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 walk. Because when they came in that door, I was like, if someone doesn't start voguing in the background, I'm going to die. But when she came and sat down and basically told the truth to shame the devil, and then was like, come for me one more time. Come for me again and let me show you what's going to happen.
Oh, and let's talk about the thread, because people have seen the movie. By the time this comes out, everybody's seen the movie. Y'all know what the spoilers are.
Look, and if you ain't seen the movie, black people, these are times when we go out and buy tickets.
Yeah, go buy the tickets. Go support Ryan Coogler.
Go.
And Marvel, y'all just give him the whole franchise. Give him the franchise the way y'all did it with what's his name in Iron Man.
They just like, don't even come with your coupons week 1 and 2. But this is the time when we really need to go to the box office and make it cha-ching. Girl, did you see the meme I sent you of the only acceptable white cosplay for Black Panther was like the 2 characters from Lord of the Rings? They were like the only 2 people in Black Panther played Gollum and a Hobbit. They were like, so they really are Tolkien whites. I was like, what? I read books.
Lord.
That was funny. But I also
speaking of reading books. Oh, go ahead. But I have a question, and there's something I wanted to string from. I didn't want to lose the thread that you started about France and about that shame the devil, because I thought a beautiful line about history, betrayal, the oppressor. France sitting up there like they didn't do what they did and being accused, and the gift that was waiting in Haiti, like the gift that was being hidden, protected, nurtured, where one of the only successful but not one of the only, there were a couple of different really, really, really successful slave rebellions,
but they managed to keep their country.
They managed to get your country, but I thought it was brilliant that just starting and naming him Toussaint and thinking about the treachery of France and history and the oppressors and Haiti, and how that was where the new king was being nurtured, was being protected. I thought that was a beautiful line.
Also juxtaposed by the fact that
and a beautiful connection.
Americas was sitting there going, and at the same time was funding an expedition with stolen tech from a Black student who had no idea that that's what her tech was being used for, to also betray again a country that had helped save them. Because you have to think at this point, like France played a bad player, but at the same time, she also called the United States out in the very next couple of scenes. The United States is down at the bottom of the ocean, trying to find its own source of vibranium too. Just, it also shows when we talk about duality, right? And Shuri talking about righteous anger, let's talk about it and take the big turn and open the door to our brown brothers in this movie. It also says a lot about your boy Namor, right? Because Namor
I'm so glad you brought that up. Namor.
Right? Namor.
Yeah.
He's also seen as an anti-hero in the comics. He's always seen being one of dual allegiances, if you will. So if you're in the comic world, like someone who is an anti-hero, think like Suicide Squad, those kind of folks that are usually generally scapegoated as your villain per se, but also have these noble characteristics because they're usually fighting for a noble cause. Another movie that's coming out, it's a DC movie, granted, is like Black Adam is another one like that, where there's a lot of righteous anger. And so talking about the United States and talking about France and like everybody's kind of played to like, oh, we want to be your friend, Wakanda. Look at you like gatekeeping and not wanting to share this tech with the world you said you would share with us. And they're like, oh yeah, but see, at the same time, we know what you want to do with it. We said we would share technology to heal and help. We didn't say we would share technology for you to dominate us and subjugate others. And then here we turn and we get to turn and learn about this amazing Mesoamerican culture, right? And this beautiful story. And I think that takes us to, and girl, I am not even going to begin to butcher some of the names in these movies. So I call Namor Namor, but I don't want to call him just by his villain name. So y'all just going to have to struggle a little bit with us for pronunciation, but we're trying very hard. So I'm going to defer to Halicue.
We are trying very hard. Andi, I want to talk about that. The beauty and the way, the care and the love that was taken with portraying ancient Mayan culture, the way like deities and those that were going to be sacrificed like to the gods in old Mayan hieroglyphs, or that beautiful blue color that they escape to the sea. When they rise up out of the sea, their weapon was song and luring, like also playing on like sirens, the mermaid,
so
like
let's
luring
talk about that
soldiers to their death
for a little bit.
I thought that, but tell me what your first impression was though of the cinematography, the way the story was told, how really it was this really beautiful history lesson. Cause like Mayan culture like not disappeared, but like either Mayan collapsed or imploded all at once.
Like ours. First of all, I think we have to go back and start thinking about geography in the context of indigenous people. We have always been taught to categorize people by these fake borders that don't really mean anything. So when we talk about like even Mesoamerican, right, means Middle American, means something like America is not was not really something that was yours in the first place. These are all indigenous people that come from the same landmass, right? And they all had this same common trauma to themselves as a people, which was colonizers, which were people, right? Like that was the shared trauma of all these people, is that they had to find ways, their culture, their land, their lives were forcibly being taken from them, and like from disease, raping of culture, destruction of culture. So there's something that I saw before I went to go see the movie that blew my mind. Because, you know, Kia, I'm a Disney fanatic. So whenever we talk about new movies and bringing in culture, you know, Disney has really screwed up culture for decades. So they usually do a lot of forework. And I was on TikTok, and the musical producer who helped work on this soundtrack was explaining that you have to understand that Mayan culture and Mayan language and Mayan music was exterminated from existence. These people's culture was singularly destroyed. Outside of stories and interpretations from conquistadors, their culture has been functionally erased. So when we talk about the music that's been recreated, it's all from architectural, like archaeological artifacts that have been dug up. So there's probably 10 to 12 Mayan instruments that they've dug up. And people from this area have just taken upon themselves to go back to indigenous cultures to figure out how these instruments would play and what music would even sound like, because you forcibly exterminated a people. So when he was getting artists together, there's only like a group of 20 or 30 people who even know how to play these instruments that don't exist, except for models that we have dug up from their lands being, destroyed and then pushed underwater and volcanoes and everything else. So the rappers that are in the movie, girl, there's only 10 Mayan speaking rappers, period. I had to let that sink in with my 14-year-old. There are only 10 people who know enough Mayan language to be able to rap it linguistically. They went out and found those 10 artists, married them with these musicians who have historically learned. They're trying to reconstruct what Mayan music would even sound like, and came up with that soundtrack. If y'all have not listened to the music, I don't speak a word of the dear Lord Spanish, and I'm trying to learn as quickly as possible. The music is beautiful. It communicates water. If you are any type of African spiritual practice, you have heard Yemeya, you've heard these songs, you've heard what water music sounds like, but to hear an indigenous interpretation of what that music is supposed to sound like, not the instruments of your colonizers, not drums and the things that you have traditionally learned to do. So think about the flutes that you heard playing in the background and all of those instruments. That is just a recreation of what we think indigenous culture is, because that's how completely they have been erased from our collective culture.
Girl.
So, I mean, it just made the story for me as a Black person even more powerful, because you have this tremendous sense of shared loss. Like that woman pregnant saying, I'm not going to take this herb. I'm scared, but I'm not scared enough to risk the next generation. And the shaman literally, again, men gambling with our lives. I hate to say it, but the shamans tell, drink this and we'll make him a king and blah, 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 blah.
Oh, God.
Putting that burden on a kid. We're going to talk about ancestral burdens we put through King's lineage in Tucson in this conversation too. But think about that fear, right, of leaving everything you know as an indigenous person. You're facing utter annihilation from this enemy that you have never seen before, with destructive power you have never seen before. And your only option is literally to die and become something new. What that sound like to you? That sounds like some Oya energy to me. So you start to see this collective spirituality that bonds us more than it divides us. But very usually, what is the greatest trick the devil ever played? Fooling us into
convincing us that he wasn't, thinking he wasn't here. It wasn't real.
So of course, I mean, we are pitted against each other. And so that's kind of when the plot thickens.
Yeah, I remember thinking, why are we fighting each other? I was like, I don't want us fighting the beautiful water people. I was actually, my romantic ass was hoping Namor was going to fall in love with Shuri or something when he's introducing her to his water world girl. That
some
music,
Kaiser Soze undertones. Like if you have not read the comics, he got some Killmonger-esque. Like my homegirl that rolls with him, my girl was just like, wait, I thought we was going to kill some people.
I was going to kill everybody. What's up? I thought we were supposed to speaking of laying waste and the power of water and Oya, Andi and I talk a lot about, and that's another topic. There's so many topics we're going to be bringing to y'all in the next seasons. We're going to be talking about deities and the Orisha, but I thought showing the destructive nature of water. Cause I was like, what they gonna do how they gonna attack Wakanda? What you mean you're gonna attack the water girl when they flooded the river that came through? And I was like, exactly the way Oshun, when she is angry, she floods the river. Floods the river.
Popped up
I was
on a vacation in the bush. Alone in Wakanda, because even me and Andrew, me and Andrew have to sit together in movies now, because of course we're dissecting all the Marvelness. We were checking out
that Reese wanted to sit to my left too. She goes, so we can talk about the movie.
We were talking about the new drum technology with Open the Water Border, right? Because that was your first foreshadow of what was to come. Because my son had to call to my attention. This is how we raising good future generations of Marvel fans. I was like, but no, it's the frequency of the water. He goes, no, forget that. Before it was just to shield them. Now that's a defense. That's a shield right there. That's protection right there. I was like, you better stop telling me things I didn't notice, young son. Young
Stop.
Padawan. The student has become the teacher. So I mean, he crept up in them on vacation and just walked out. And it was so funny when Shuri leaned over, because Queen, let me tell you this, Angela Bassett, because one of these memes said it, and it's true. She goes, she was acting like she was in a slave movie. She was acting for her life. Y'all need to get this woman an Oscar for this movie. Because she came out the gate, giving y'all face, giving y'all regalness. Just, Angela Bassett could have told me to go take out the trash in the tone of Queen Ramonda, and I was going to do it. And then chastise myself for not having done it sooner. I was on board for Okoye getting fired. I felt so bad for her, but yet at the same time I was telling my son, going, but I understand it though.
But I understand, because she fumbled
the bag.
That was a bad fumble. That's a Black mom in her chair, and Yeah. I told you I didn't want her to go.
A couple of things you can do. But that daughter mama thing and getting in between of what has been understood between them to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just her acting in this, just get out of here. Just, I don't even want to talk about it. But, you know, the fact that, you know, she was trying to take Shuri out. She was trying to have this conversation. And if y'all don't know it, good piece of actual real African spirituality, because I have to remind my son all the time, like, this part's real. Like during the funeral, I had to talk to him and say, you know, this is real. Right? There's a part of this, the celebration around funerals. And then you think about second lines, right? In Louisiana history and how to us funerals are a combination of a family being really sad, but a community celebrating. Right. And that's why we go to celebrations of life, right? Our funerals feel different. But at the same time, at the center of it is a lot of sadness and pain. And we need to think about that as people, right? We know why we celebrate, but I have always felt that way at funerals. I felt like Shuri, especially being a child, having had a parent, someone close to me pass away as a child. I never understood this false gaiety that we put on. And I know why we tell these great stories, and I know that we do this, but I think sometimes we forget to let ourselves be in pain. Yeah. Like that wailing, it makes me think of cultures where like they pay people to wail and to cry and to mourn. Like that's a part I think sometimes we rob ourselves of, because I mean, Q, I was wondering what you thought about that conversation, because when she was like, no, we're going into the bush, I was like, oh, you in trouble. That was the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, you in trouble. Your mama said,
y'all going outside.
And she took your cell phone. She said, leave your stuff.
We going outside. Y'all got to go.
That's what I do to my children.
We're going outside.
When they get spiritually overwhelming, I take mine to nature.
Yes.
So I love
but
that.
You know, what you just said is, that truly is what it was. She was like, no, you're going to get out this lab. You're going to put down your instruments and your holograms and all this stuff. You don't understand, or you don't believe the ancestors. We're going to go out here, and what are we going to do? We're going to be quiet, and we're going to sit, and we're going to be still, because that is how we do the work. Like, that is how we travel. That is how we calm the mind. That is how we make a connection to the ancestors. But she wanted to forward roll on through that and not pay attention. I don't even think it was forward rolling through it. Shuri kind of called you on your bullshit. Like, I've been sitting in quiet and pain, and ain't nobody coming to me. When have you felt like that in your spirituality? I did. But I don't think she was ever able to, I don't think she ever was ever, as a character, I don't think she was ever able to be quiet. And Andi, you know, when we've tried to be quiet and we mad.
You was thinking you was quiet. Like, we don't just.
Yeah, but if you weren't, you were just mad in front of the ocean. We were just.
That's why as ancestors, like, I'm working as ancestors, and I'm not saying y'all don't strike me down or like whoop me or give me no extra lesson for saying this. But I think it's also too in how we communicate things about the spiritual realm. If you get quiet, you'll just hear a voice, then you'll go to the ancestral plane. It ain't really that simple. Some of us have more to quiet in our minds than others. My mind is screaming. Yours is whispering.
Yeah.
Right? It depends. And what Shuri was saying is, this thing y'all are telling me is supposed to happen is not happening. And everybody saw it. That was the thing about how sometimes you just gotta let people just fuck around in their own fuckery and just let them be in it. Like, they were all trying to love her, but from a loving distance with boundaries. Right? Even with my boy, Mbuko, right? When he was like, yeah, your brother asked me to watch over you. And even when he was like, telling
I know
her,
you don't want me here, sis.
Sideways, like, even when, like, he just, and I love how he would just edge to the side, like, hey, sis. Like, you didn't even know I was here with my big self. I got something to say.
Yeah.
You acting a little out of pocket. Like, when he was trying to explain to her, because I thought this was another pivotal part of the movie, this is not just a superhuman person to them. Like, we understand our Black Panther is a person. They know him to be a god. And true, in the Marvel series, Nerd Minute, he's a mutant. He is not what a superhero is. Halicue's looking like, what the fuck is the difference? There's a difference. A mutation is actually a human who has come together with someone who has
supernatural,
it's a mutation of human DNA. There, you know.
Is it like being a demigod?
Put it like this: Magneto and the bad guys think it is. They think they're a better evolution of humans to come, which is why humans are trying to kill them. What Dr. X is saying is, this is a different type of human. If we act superhuman and subjugate humans, how does that make us any better than what we are killing? It's this common archetypal fight. When you think about superheroes and you think about the mutant series and you think about this man and how he wrote, this is why he was so prolific. This is why everybody loves that little white man who wrote these comics so much, because he was making so much social commentary about these big archetypes. This is philosophy, right? It's kind of like the dark heart of man, that whole God complex things we have to wrestle with. And that's basically what T'Challa was telling his dad, right? We can never let the mantle take away our humanity and stop doing what's right, right? Even if we are gods, doesn't that make it even more important that we have a moral code if we have all this power? And so this is going to be the first time that you're actually going to see, this is why our X-Men fans and all of us get so excited, because the X-Men, that there's like, when people ask, why can't you have superheroes at Disney World? There's this old line of demarcation. Marvel hasn't always been owned by the same company. Universal Studios owned a part of Marvel. Like, that guy, Stan Lee, had a lot of people take advantage of him later in his life and like steal his licensing to people. He died almost penniless. His fans took care of him later, and almost blind and penniless. So he signed all types of rights away to things that were his emotional capital at the end of his life. It is really through generosity and care and people just jumping in there and helping him get his rights back to stuff. And that's why he was in so many cameos. People don't know that. Those Marvel and those studios, they voluntarily gave that man those credits and those payments and those royalties for things. For a long time, the only thing they could do to pay him was to have him do those cameos in the movies. We all knew those were his characters, but the people couldn't even legally pay him for his property because it was owned by someone else. And so that's why Universal Studios always got to have certain superheroes. You couldn't see him at Disney World. But now, like, that agreement, we're getting close to, it's kind of like the opening of like the JFK files. Like, sometime 1,000,000 years in the future, like, we'll be able to have Black Panther at Disney World in Florida. Like, there's a certain number of miles that you can't have these certain characters. But for us that are Marvel's fans and X-Men fans, people who are mutant series fans, which I'm also a fan, this is really cool, because in the comic world, the X-Men Storm like marries Black Panther. Like, they're a royal couple. Like, and an African deity sees Storm as who? You know who they think Storm is. Oh, exactly. Yeah? So they see her as a kind of a royal deity, and so they got married. There's this whole storyline around it, right?
Okay, see, I ain't even know that.
Just Black fabulousness, which I almost feel like they couldn't let that happen, because I feel like a movie studio would explode somewhere.
Y'all, there are certain things that, like, when we travel, my husband is like a professor, like, the whole time. For Andi's family, I know it's like Professor Andi. Like, I bet it's lectures, pre-lectures. I bet it's lectures in the car. I bet it's an exam. Andi's a hard fucking grader too. Andi will definitely be that teacher that's a professor that's not going to give your ass an A. It's hard to get an A in Andi's Marvel Universe class. She's a hard grader. She don't care how charming you are. I know it must be like that. But this is why I love one of my favorite.
When I tell my son, like, oh, that's cute, but incorrect. Let's talk about what. But that was close.
I love this. But I think it's important that we have this conversation about archetypes and like superheroes. One of my favorite, y'all, I talk about I talk about Yvonne Giroux all the time. She's a comic head, and she's a professor, and she writes about and practices hoodoo. And I just love that we get to have this conversation. Andi, is there anything else we need to say around?
Yes, there is more I need to say. Because we talked about hoodoo.
But I want to ask about, because that's a thing that was so resonant to me. It was when the state of mind and spirit that Shuri was in when she went to the ancestral plane, and her approach and the quote unquote work she was doing when she was in that state of mind versus. But sometimes we do have to do work when we're angry. We do have to do work when we're suffering. We can't always be, as we get older, we understand probably not a good idea to do, but that's why hoodoo was developed. Like, we were doing this work to like lift us out of suffering, to deliver our people. Just what else do you have to say on that?
I don't know though, because at first I felt a certain way about it. And I was sitting there in the theater trying to teach a lesson about it. And I did tell my son, it's like, that's why it's so important. Anger is important. Especially righteous anger when things have been done to you. So I think it's important for us as people of color to recognize righteous anger. I think that's because we look at these villain stories like Namor and say, where did they come from? That's where they came from. Unacknowledged trauma. Y'all won't admit that things were painful. We won't talk about them. We won't acknowledge that people get through grief differently. How you mourned, Queen, and how you dealt with the loss of your husband and son was different even than Nakia. Nakia was out. Peace. I'm out of here. Straight Sagittarius. I'm going to Haiti. Now we know why eventually. Yeah. But she was completely gone. And even the Queen looked at her with this sense of betrayal. And she was like, look, I had to grieve my own way. And a year wasn't enough. I could not come back. And then you find later that, that was a wish of his for her not to be there because he thought it was too soon. And it was. Because look what happened. Yeah. Right? Exactly. Think about if his son had been there when all this happened. Right? Who likely would have been kidnapped? Who would have survived that? Right? It would have been a whole different scenario. And so anger is important. And so that's why I say, at first I had that question about, why are we letting her be the Black or Panther in this state as Killmonger, with that unresolved, right? But then I realized, what better way to show duality? That two things can be true at once.
The same time. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so true. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Would no other man put on that suit and been able to show what she had to get through, which is the immigrant experience and the Black experience? Stand up in the back if you hear me. Righteous anger and nobility. That's what we struggle with our whole lives. Burn them all down for what they did to us. Everyone. Namor at 5 is all of us. Burn it down. She even said it. He whispered it in her ear. That's when Halicue thought they was going to date. That's every toxic boyfriend that you had.
I know. I was just like, yes, we could bring it all down together. That's when literally I was like, my sister is so right about me that I present one face, but truly what I want is destruction and for us to destroy.
And it's powerful and it feels good, but we cannot
too. It is,
live there. Yeah. Because to live there destroys that ability to understand. And I think women are just more poised to do it than others. And it's because we hold life within us. It is to understand the duality of those two things, that your anger can very well exist, and it can be righteous, but you cannot let it burn the world. You can let it burn you, but you have to be ready to build from the ashes.
Yeah.
Because if you are not ready, you can burn down the ashes and find nothing there but a hollow shell because you did not build something up, which I think that was her ultimate choice of, I think about she was upset that she didn't see an ancestor, and the one that because I can imagine you waiting to go to the ancestral plane and waiting to talk to your brother and get some sense of wisdom about what to do in this crisis situation. And your cousin Faith is sitting there.
Yeah.
And basically telling you, you're more like me than you. You are more angry than anything else. And Q, I remember that part in my spirit. Lord, with the situation I'm in now, it can be so seductive to say, oh, you can destroy. I feel like Bane, you adopted the dog. I was born into it. You don't know trauma.
You don't know.
For me, the people who have had trauma and are empty inside, you took the easy route. Some of us had to get the shit kicked out of us emotionally and still choose to be human.
Yeah.
Again and again and again. Because there's generations of us that
and
needed
soft.
it.
We had to, when we had no example of that or experience of it, but we had to learn it ourselves and we had to embody it when truly we never got a chance to be angry or to be destructive. Oh, girl, yeah, you're right. I love the way you said that.
At her angriest, when she took it out all on the general. At her angriest, good girl, when she said that, have I not given enough? Have I not given everything to Wakanda? When they was in her face, questioning her judgment. And what did she turn around and do? Save somebody else that wasn't her own?
Yeah.
Riri, let's take a minute to talk about my new girl, Riri.
Before you do, let's get to Riri. But you literally chose our tarot card when you were talking about burn it down. I was like, well, that's an intention tarot card pull. Andi's talking about the tower, and the tower came up on Friday when I saw a beautiful client, and I was trying to explain to her the difference between Halicue, the first time I saw this card at like 25, and the Halicue of my age that I am now. And I see this card and I get peaceful inside. Cause I mean that whether or not you want it to come down, you got your ego caught up in what is destroyed. It's coming down, and it's for the best. It is going to burn down to the ground, and it needs to burn down to the ground so that something new, the true foundation, can be built again. So thank you, Andi, for that. The tarot card of the episode is the Tower. Thank you for that tarot study. Now let's move to,
well, before we move to
Andi, what's your reflection on it?
Not even that it's coming down. Because I think about this meme that talks about fire signs, and it goes, not only am I burning bridges, I'm fucking burning the whole town. Like, I'm burning your mother's house, your cousin's house. How can I put it? Sometimes, because with this current situation I'm in right now, when I talk about righteous anger, when people have been victims of things that are truly atrocities, because I don't, when we talk about the Mayan culture that's presented there, I was just looking at something, and I didn't know this. The two warriors he has with him, Namor, who is the fierce girl,
her.
That's his cousin, right?
Oh, right on.
And the other one, Atuma is his name. He's the strongest and fastest, one of the strongest and fastest warrior. He serves as a counterpart to the Dora Milaje, right? So that's kind of, General Okoye's kind of call to her, the person that was baiting her, right?
Yeah, her peer, yeah.
And you talk about these archetypal struggles of the tower. There's this great inclination, and very much I think what Shuri and Killmonger show us is, well, if it's burning down, why can I not participate? Where's my torch? Why don't I get to be a part of that righteous anger to burn this thing down, right? It again reminds me of that same conversation that Namor was having, and because there's a lot of controversy, and I try to stay in my very black business, but I think it's fair when we talk about hot topics. One of the conversations it's had is there are a lot of lighter presenting people of Latin descent that are saying, oh, this is just one version of this story, right? As if there's this still continuation to silence indigenous parts of Latin culture, right? That I think me as a black person, even sometimes I have a tendency to forget that the Latin we see in the world is still through the lens of colonizers, right? It's not talking about indigenous people. It's not talking about people who are Mayan, Aztec, that were here before these colonizers even took the term what it means to be Latin, and have even put their own play on that, right? So we all have these even amongst our own people, there are still these struggles that are all due to one evil, right? Which is colonization. Why don't we turn our anger and our violence toward that? Why don't we return that violence with violence, right? Like, is that not what our ancestors teach us as well? I don't think there's a right answer to that. And so that's when you asked me that question about duality and Shuri. At first, I was just like, ooh, she shouldn't take on this mantle angry. But then I don't think there would have been any better person to show that two things can be true at the same time. That you could be a victim of a very terrible evil that you should not forget. That you should not turn your back on, because that evil can take you and come and consume you at any moment, but you still have to have the balance with seeking a way forward so that these children that come after us that have to find this place amongst these colonizers, like, we still are responsible for finding a way for them, because they can't run and hide anymore through whatever choices, right? You could be mad at T'Challa for opening up the world to Wakanda. You could be mad at Riri, this completely innocent, really smart black girl who for a class found a way to find vibranium, right? Like, we could make her the scapegoat if you want to.
Yeah.
But really, when it comes down to it, we weren't going to stay a secret forever. What do we say? We're young, black, and gifted. We have a light in us, right? Like a lot of empaths do. We are always going to draw people to us who want to suck that out of us. Take our resources, drain us of what we have because they think it will make them us. And it never will. And it will never be enough, right? They won't stop at Wakanda. They're going to go to Tolokan. They're going to go to wherever else the next place is. And so, like, how do you balance
that can be exploited?
Yeah, how do you balance that? And I think it's a common conversation when we talk about hot topics. I think it's the same conversation we have with people who want to gatekeep certain practices.
Yeah,
you kind of understand them. But I also just think, as we were talking about and turning the corner to Riri, just beautiful, like, black girl moments. You're talking about, like, the comedic timing. Because, Letitia Wright, in and of herself, like, from a political standpoint, can be kind of problematic. Like, all during COVID or whatever, she just was always in the midst of some controversy. But, like, the chemistry, her and Danny and this new actress, the new Riri, I don't know your name yet, and I will learn it forthwith. Halicue, you look up her name. Which actress? She's going to be in the new series. Riri Williams, Dominique Thorne, right? Okay. She's also going to be in a new series, Lionheart. She's the new Lionheart. She's going to, be the incarnation of the new Tony Stark, this new generation of superheroes. And if you're new to this, if you'll go back and look at all the new Marvel movies in this chapter of the Pantheon, there's all these new younger superheroes that you're being introduced to, right? So, like, America and the Multiverse of Madness. Now you've got Riri. Do y'all remember the young teenager that knew Tony Stark, that met him, that was also at the funeral at the end of it? Do y'all remember this little kid? Y'all were like, who is that young preteen at Tony Stark's funeral?
Oh, yes. Okay.
He's gonna be a player, like, there's a lot of new Disney Plus movies. Like, there's a new Muslim American young lady who's going to be playing in a lot of roles. And so in between, like, Disney Plus is Marvel Universe and the real Marvel Universe. Then, of course, y'all know my boy Jonathan Majors is coming to be the villain that you love to hate, Kang the Conqueror. He's going to be the new supervillain of this whole era.
Oh.
Yes, Mr. Lovecraft Country himself.
Oh, my God. He is in everything.
Yes.
Andy, so your previews were different than ours then, because he was literally in 4 previews. So as you tell me this, I was like, damn, this is why we didn't get a second season of Lovecraft Country. This man been working. Like, he's about to be in 4 movies.
In Loki. We meet him in Loki. And then he also showed up in the Multiverse of Madness. Remember? With Agatha and Doctor Strange at the end of the Spider-Man movie. So he is going to be your new Thanos of this chapter.
Oh, nice.
Of the Marvel. So yeah, we finna see lots of him. So much of him.
Can I say something about Riri and the way I think it affects, like, Hoodoo, or made me think about?
Ooh, and talk about aunties and their relationship. Think about the word aunties and their relationship.
Like, right. And, like, claiming, I love the way, here's this modern American girl who is clearly has this magical mind. She is a genius. Like, she's just a genius, shaking y'all down at MIT to get y'all's homework right. She's building this and, like, crazy stuff. I love the way, and I hope that this is what happens with a lot of our young Black girls. Like, they don't know exactly how to make that spiritual connection back to Africa, to be protected by, like, our spirituality, our religions that originate there in Western Africa and Nigeria and in Benin. Like, the crazy way we make that connection back and can be protected by it. It can be our foundation. I love that. I love how, just like, off top, she was in danger. Come back to Wakanda. We protect you. This is, come back.
Girl, not only
we are
that,
your people. This is who we are.
We respond in a crisis. It wasn't no conversation like, do I go with y'all? The police are coming. It was just like, girl, who's driving?
Come on.
Who got the car? You gonna use it? And then I love the way that they find these moments to have fights in the middle of crisis. You gonna use this? You gonna drive? No, I want to drive. I'm gonna drive a motorcycle. Well, I brought my spear. Girl, you don't even use lotion with your ashy head. You told girl, she gave a Fenty complexion number in this movie. She said Fenty 440. Yeah. I said, Rihanna, every time a cash register said cha-ching. Every time I see Wakanda in some reference to Rihanna and Fenty Beauty, get your money, girl. Get your bag. Like, I love the Black woman supporting Black women. I love the way they portray that in a crisis situation, like that way that we just gravitate to each other and we know how to do each other, but can also talk shit about each other in such a loving, supportive way. Cause I want people, especially when I see on TikTok, and I remember like hearing our aunties and stuff talk, and it's almost like some of us grew, like some of y'all who didn't have a real cool aunties, like it's always like you had to separate your aunties off to be able to have these really cool conversations that you remember having with your auntie.
Oh
right?
my God.
It was never like it was just accepted to let's just all celebrate our aunties for who they are. And just let them live their best life. Like, they was the best example of like two middle fingers that life can give you, but in such a loving way. So I really did want to just take this moment to call out like that timing and back and forth. Like, I mean, from the minute the general's talking about her project, right? Like, oh, that's so ugly. Did you have to make it so ugly? And when it opens up with her head bald, I understand exactly what she's talking about the whole time. I was like, oh, that suit's a mess. I agree with you 100%. Like, it brings out nothing beautiful about you. But when she said her head was ashy, and then they were just having these really real conversations.
Oh my God. She's like, I am low key. What about me isn't low key? And I was like, normally General's supposed to fade to the background, girl. You look like a British Vogue cover.
Leisure wear.
So sexy. So striking. And everybody's got an auntie like that.
I wanted to order just off the television screen.
Oh, yeah.
How you going to show up in a blazer and a red Africanized tracksuit? It wasn't an outfit they put on.
Who else gave us just the avatar of Black
my
beauty?
Girl,
like, was Michaela Cole.
My British, yes.
Yes, Michaela Cole. When I tell you from, I forget the name of the show that made her famous. Kid Fury turned me on to that show like years ago and turned me on to her. We left, Michaela Cole is her name.
It's the one where she's sexually assaulted and she's a journalist. It's a really good one. I'm going to think of the name in a minute.
I have to think of the name of that movie. But when I tell you, looking at her, I was like, this is who Beyonce was talking about when she said alien superstar. I was like, some of us are alien superstars for real. I was like, I wish my face looked different.
She's got these amazing cheekbones. Like, she's just like, when you see her, you're just like, oh my God.
Damn. Like, that is divinity walking. Like,
and I was just in this month's Vogue too. She did an amazing, and it was the first time that Vogue, it might have been American Vogue. I think that's why we were so surprised. It was the first time they shot in Senegal, which is where she's from. She's Senegalese.
I wish her cover was better, though. I think British Vogue is doing a better job of making. Like, I
just love she got to do it where she was from. Right,
of course.
They had
just the cover photo. I wish Anna didn't choose a good cover photo, but she was amazing and brilliant.
Well, she's a hater now. That ain't never changed.
Okay. Is she really?
Look at who is she celebrating. Like, she celebrates fake Black people. The minute you got on board with Kim Kardashian, and girl.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, Anna, I thought we had some standards. God damn. Like, really? Like,
now I feel like we go back. What's the name of the movie?
We're post Devil Wears Prada for sure. Yeah.
We're post. I'm like, oh, you're having a moment.
Yeah, she really is. And she's getting and the editor of British Vogue, who I believe is a Black man, is.
And she didn't defend Andre Leon Talley either.
Yeah, that's a shame. And he's a homeboy. He's from Mississippi.
Of course he is. And has impeccable taste.
Andi, make the final case for Black people, for us, if y'all are like, we don't really like,
because we really don't know how this gonna end.
We don't.
Like, first of all, let me tell y'all this, because I really love that Latino and Black people are having a moment over this movie. Yes. I am glad that this was an opportunity where a Black filmmaker, out of all the stories he could have chosen around Wakanda, and to have to, because Letitia Wright actually tells this story of how she found out that Chad Boseman died. Mm-hmm. And that all these folks kept asking her, like, are you going to make a statement? She goes, what are you talking about? Like, I just talked to him last night. And she keeps trying to call him.
Yeah.
And finally the director calls her and is trying to talk to her. And she's like, but I'm calling him. He hears another phone. He goes, what are you doing? I'm calling Chad right now, because she just was in such disbelief. And she goes, Letitia, the family don't. And that's when she realized it clicked for her. And she just passed out just from grief. So to think about a young Black director who had some huge choices to make, with such an opportunity that these actors had to have with a statement, and to not only do that, but to open up that opportunity to other brown people and indigenous people to tell an amazing story and to have us have these wonderful conversations and really still set up a good movie. I will tell you that the Black Panther movie by itself, there are some Marvel movies I ain't paying money to go see. Love and Thunder, I'm still mad about. I went to go see it because it was a Marvel movie and I went to go see it. But like, there's always like the Thor franchise. I've never paid to see a Thor movie before Avengers out my own pocket. It has always been something I've always waited for it took the Avengers pantheon before I went back and watched individual Thors because it just wasn't funny to me like that. And I love Loki and his whole series. It took me a while to really get into Chris Hemsworth, and that story just didn't resonate to me as a standalone story. I would tell you who else didn't stand alone early that I had to go, and I think it was different for me with Iron Man because of what I knew about him personally, being a kid of the 80s. Like, that's what made it for me with the early Iron Man movies. But by themselves, I don't know if I could say they were the best storytelling. Like, of all the Iron Man stories in the comic book series, I wouldn't say that they picked the best of the best to showcase. But Black Panther has always showed out. It just has always showed out. The costumes. When you talk about world building, like, did you see the juxtaposition of how they would be trading in Wakanda and how they would show trading underwater? They would show playing music in Wakanda. When you go back and look at the second montage, I can't wait till this people have this at home.
Into your
They would
lovely ear holes.
juxtapose
So take this
playing music
delicious
in
moment
Wakanda
to tap
and
the
then playing
subscribe
music
button so that you
underwater.
never miss a single
They looked
episode
at the
of the new Hoodoo
sunrise in
podcast. But
Wakanda.
if this
It was when
week's
she
episode
was
really
battling
delighted
with
or
him, and
inspired
she kept having all
we
these
want to hear from
flashbacks
you. Tell us
that
what's up.
showed
We
the
know there's a
differences
question
in the
you've been dying to
beautiful way
ask
our
us.
cultures
And as
have
much as
had
y'all know
to
we love to talk,
adapt,
we know
but
you
yet
know
we're
how
so
excited we are to
similar
answer it.
in our
Email us
trauma
at
that we have around our
at
people.
gmail.com and tell us what's on that
Right, and this
magical,
really
mystical
desire
mind of
that we're
yours.
not
You
going to
know
have to
that we want
run
to hear from
anymore.
you,
We don't want to have to
especially about what
relocate
magical
our
topics you'd
people
like for us to
anymore.
introduce and explore in our fabulous 5th season.
I think
of
it
course,
was
follow
a
us on
beautiful
social
piece
media.
of
That's where you get to see
storytelling
the
that
real
man had to do at a time that was a time of great
and
grief
actually fun,
for
interesting,
a lot
exciting
of
things
people
that
who
we're
were
doing
involved
and
in
we
these
have to offer.
franchises.
All of our
and
handles
you
and links are down there in the show notes.
a
We want you to
whole
join our new home
new
community.
girl, the conversations they're having over how gorgeous that man is. Like, I love the conversations over.
This is where you can find our pre-show shenanigans and all of the extra special content that we're revealing just for you.
He's a
And for
gordita, there's
you,
space for him. He
darling
was
divas that
adequately
just
fine
want to
enough
say
in these
thank you
conversations
for
we're
all
having
of the
about
magical goodness that we
skin
deliver to
tone.
you.
And if
Did
you've
you know
ever
that you can
seen
buy us
him,
a coffee by
like,
clicking on
look
the
up him and
sparkly
Lupita
coffee link
dancing
right down there in the show
anytime
notes?
they play a
Okay,
cumbia
all of you
at
boss
one of these
switches,
press events,
heavenly
he
hoodoos,
is up and
sexy
dancing.
AF
He will
sirens
tell
and
you he was a kid
spellcasters.
that
I
came up
miss
from
you
the
already,
streets
but
of
I know I'm
Mexico,
going to see you
and
next
that
week.
he is
Same
telling
day,
an
same
indigenous
time
people's story.
on the
There is
new Hoodoo.
in all of the pain.
The girls took me to see that on Mother's Day. Like, I was like, why did y'all do this to me on Mother's Day? I was messed up over
that
that.
we have as a people watching this movie, because that's what I'm always afraid of. Like, it took me a long time to watch the end of Endgame where Black Panther died before he really died. Like, that was hard for me. I get attached, especially us that are kids of trauma. So, like, stories and TV and books mean a lot to me and Halicue, because that was our raft during some really hard times. But to see the beautiful way that this young Black director not only took this story, I love seeing all these TikTok creators also saying, thank you for reconnecting us to a part of being Latin that existed before colonizers. Like, we're indigenous people. Like, the folks that we knew, they have like Aztecs painted on their trunk of their lowriders. And, like there is a whole different community of folks who did not have a voice before. And we're having these really important conversations about, and I'm not going to dare to speak for any one of these communities, but we're all having these conversations in our communities about what does it mean to be Black? What does it mean to be spiritual? What does it mean to be spiritual now versus, because girl, how many movies have you seen them throw ancestors around like play fighting? I hope you go to your ancestors. You go to your ancestors. By the end of the movie, I was like, for us that was spiritual, I was like, oh, girl, y'all don't even see the other fight that's going on. Like, this is what? What?
This is beautiful. It was so
girl,
good.
This is going to be on repeat. I told him, y'all going to get sick of me. When we get to the point where it's like Black is King, where I can freeze frame and talk about it, it's over.
It was so good. Andi, we're going to watch this movie like over and over. Oh, what else did I want to say too? That I think relates to hoodoo and young people and people's culture being, and like what our work is in the healing and harm nature of hoodoo. Like the thing I loved about the ending, and I normally don't get all droopy and weepy and shit over, there was a hidden baby. But I remember thinking, our children are our treasure. Like our children are our treasure. And sometimes they have to be so they have to be so protected. Like this young king, just the smile on his face. And I was like being brought up in love and care, away from distraction. And people say these horrible things about Haiti, but I love that is where he was being raised. And that was one of our final, like our lineage, like our descendants.
And if you take a little bit deeper, because I love to connect, this is part of when I love going back to Oakland, California, and you see their love of Wakanda, because there's also this beautiful story. Think about the difference between Toussaint and Killmonger. Think about a young child being separated from culture, right? Not because you're being gatekept, right? Because you have to be kept a secret because of the revolution that you are, but because of the preciousness of that revolution.
Of you.
I just thought it was a beautiful way to also not forget the Killmonger in us. Because I think that's an important message that Namor has. We cannot forget the savagery of what's been done to us, but it's how we choose to heal and process it and integrate it into our lives. We may still have to relocate. We may still have to run and hide the most precious of us, but the reasons why and how we do it make all the difference in the world to what happens to our children. Because you got to remember, Namor was a child that was brought up in a protected environment. Right? So imagine if Killmonger had gotten what he wanted. You remember when he thought like it would have been different if I was in Wakanda? Namor was raised in a place, but it was still how they dealt with anger. It's how we choose to integrate anger. It's how we choose to heal and continue to tell this story. And I love that the story isn't over. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing there was a lot of reviews saying that for a normal post-credit scene, that they thought Marvel chose very respectfully to center this around the healing of the Black family. And I said, that's interesting that y'all saw that as the post-credit. I said, because I see the continuation of the story as the conversation Namor had with his cousin, which is where she was like, I ain't forget though. We're going to call that
I ain't
scene
forget.
called
We coming back.
Though.
And I can't wait to see a still. And I like to talk about alliance. And we don't know where the alliance is going to go, but I like the idea of alliance. And I don't know if you noticed, like in the glyph in the drawing, and it's jaguar. It was a jaguar, but it was black, and it looked like the panther and their god. And I was like, it happened so quickly I couldn't really study it, but I like that idea of alliance, how we can fight besides one another or depend on one another, respect one another, respect our respective ancestors, the way we use our medicine, our love of our culture without appropriating. And I thought that was a beautiful, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Cause as a hoodoo, as a Black woman, ain't nobody I respect more than a curandera.
And it's still that same warning, right? Like you can't love the enemy. Like I hate to say it, you can't, cause basically his thing was saying like, yeah, they're going to trust him again. Like you just got to understand, like now they're our ally. And if they're not our ally, there's going to come a point when this same monster is going to consume them and we still have to be ready. Right. And so I think it's still going to be one of those relevant conversations we're going to have between our cultures. I think how we're going to choose to heal ourselves as a people is what's going to continue the story. I love the fact that there's still a lot of hope. Right. And I also love the fact that Shuri still got to be who she was, right? Nobody quieted what she chose to become as a result of her pain. And I think at the end, she had some resolution on who she was. And I think she did an amazing job showing that duality. Because of personal politics, there were some times I didn't want to support my girl, but she did a beautiful job with this role. And I appreciate what she did for the role. Now, Angela, if they don't give you all of the things When I'm saying just at awards time, I'm like, Kia Fury, you just need to come to the meet with your purse open. And people just need to present you with all of the things.
It was so good.
They just need to invent new categories around your portrayal in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
People were lucky to have been acting. I hate to say it, but these two black guys had me cracking up. They were like, she was acting like she was in a slave movie. Like she wanted to watch. She was like, usually, because that's usually those roles that they reserve for us to really get to be dramatic and show our pain. And I'm so glad she got to do that kind of acting in a movie that told a very real pain. And it's a lot of people think that, oh, this is a superhero movie. Why do we put all this weight into
impossible.
it? Is there a story that can hold all of the weight and pain that we feel? Like, I feel at this point, any vehicle that we can choose to have to tell our story, it gets to be yours. Like, nobody's going to tell me how I get to write my story. If y'all want to write y'all story through Black Panther, do it.
Exactly. Yes. Which is why we call ourselves the new hoodoo. We may not look like y'all. We may not look like the hoodoo influencers y'all see on TikTok. We may not look, sound, act, talk the way
look or sound like them.
Like other people with a bigger or broader audiences or more. But we are, I know, like, we are our own, and thank you for saying that. Like, nobody gets to write our story. And I'm so grateful, Andi, we're living a fucking golden age. Like, I wish people could have the difference between the 80s and now. We had some good art, but there is an abundance of riches and wealth of and looking at the Black experience. And I feel that there's...
And Black women just looking amazing, like no hair. Angela with the short white afro. I don't know why y'all keep trying to make me go white. The dreads. Like, I keep going back to like Woman King and just my girl. And then this love stories when girl at the end was like, hey honey, thank you so much. I was like, ladies loving ladies. Yes. Like, I just, y'all was giving it all to us.
Giving us all to us. Thank you.
You did remember, you saw that at the end, right? With old girl. And
I was like, look at all this intersectionality, just intersectional in Wakanda. We just.
Oh, she talked about my boy's husband being in prison. I was like, oh, y'all was just cutting throats in this movie too. And she said, at least you can still go visit your husband. I said,
yeah. Oh, it was beautiful in so many ways.
She didn't have to read you and fire you. And you still came with fashion. I ain't never seen nobody get fired and look better fired than they did in their job.
What kind of athleisure wear you got on at home, General? Like, you're not even just at work and just giving us...
I love you, Beyonce, but Ivy Park, they coming for you from Wakanda.
Y'all cutaways.
I see a
sunglasses.
Product. Adidas ain't treat you right. I say go to Disney and y'all blow this up because I'm going to buy every piece of it. Disney stores.
Andi, have the last word. Take us out.
This is a movie I continue to be proud to take the young men I have created to. This is a movie that represents the amount of childhood trauma that, Disney, his world, his fantasy has helped me. I think it's a testament to if we can use creativity and artistry to help people, deal with really big parts of their lives, there's some beautiful stories that can happen. So this is just, again, an extension of some people who really, and I don't credit that to just Disney. I credit that to Ryan Coogler. I credit that to this young, Black, talented actors and actresses that he worked with. Because they all have advanced degrees. They have all done their own work. Like, Disney is not magic. They just wrote check. This really comes from some people being very dedicated to this. So amazing.
Oh my gosh, so much gratitude to each and every one of you. Y'all, hit the subscribe button so you know the very moment we upload a new episode. And of course, check the show notes to follow us on social media. And of course, we always want y'all to think about emailing us. Email us a question at pillarsporchpath@gmail.com and we will answer it on air. So see y'all next week and prepare yourselves. We're serving up a jam-packed 2-part series on healing and harm in hoodoo. And remember, we love you in the special, utterly unique way that you hoodoo.